Hello, welcome to Soulprint Intuitive Tarot for September 21st. So, I'm recording this on the Monday, so the 20th. So the Canadian elections are ongoing as we speak. So I wanted to double check with my pendulum and just see what that looks like. So let's just start there. I've got a few pendulum questions and then we're going to get on with the reading. So here we go. Okay, so in Canada, there's, I think, 335 seats. And the majority, in order to form a majority government, you need 170. So let's take a peek and see what that looks like. I'm just going to pause for 1 second. Okay, so pendulum, it's ready to talk. Let's see what it'll tell us. Is Justin Trudeau going to be able to form a majority government? Will he get the 170 seats necessary? Okay. So now I've said all along that it would be just by the slimmest of slim majorities. So then the next question is he going to get fewer than 5 additional seats that he requires? Yeah, so it really is going to be a very slender majority. I also just want to say there's just been a lot of chitter chatter, mostly in Canada, about, why on earth would he call a federal election in the middle of a pandemic? This is terrible. He should be just tossed out of office just for that alone. Well, the answer is if somebody can tell me which other Canadian political party would not have done the exact same thing to press their advantage, I'd love to hear the answer. But you have to remember at the bottom of it all, whether it's Canada, whether it's United States, whether it's the UK, the bottom line is politicians are politicians. And they're going to do what works for them because that's how it works. Okay, so there's that. A couple of just random kind of questions. Is Trump actually going to run again in 2024? Is he actually going to run? Okay, consistently, I'm always getting a no for that. So if he's not going to run, he's not going to win. There's that. Is the California recall and then the absolute disaster of Saturday's protest in terms of success, is that going to have, or is it having a dampening effect on some of the Republicans who see that things are not going well in their direction? And that looks like a yes. I mean, God Almighty, I think it's maybe time for some of these people to give their head a shake. And just this one, I just want to, so yeah, last week on Thursday, the government of Alberta implemented, it sort of rolled back everything that was open and it shut everything down again because in Alberta, we have the fewest number of people vaccinated. I think it's like at 70-something% who have at least one vaccination. And the highest number of COVID cases. In fact, now they're talking about bringing in like the army, right? So he rolled everything back, and part of what was happening was by yesterday morning, Sunday morning, the Alberta vaccine passports would be available to print. And so that was done. And so I'm just putting it out there simply as a matter of, it can get done and it can get done quickly. Now, the question is that going to be enough to save Kenny's political career? No. In fact, so maybe I'll just ask it this way. There are talks about forcing him to resign after this federal election. Is that accurate? Are those kinds of conversations going on? Yes, they are. Okay. Is Abbott, governor of Texas? So really interesting. I saw some stats this morning that was talking about, I think California has something like 25,000 new cases. I think it was in the last 24 hours. Florida had 21,000. Texas had 45. It's getting to the point where, as frustrated as I can be about people who just will not listen to science, you got to, on some level, just start to feel sorry for people in Texas, particularly those who are doing their level best to do the right thing, and they're just getting blocked in every which way they turn. Is Abbott ultimately going to pay a significant political price for his handling of the pandemic? Yes. Okay, so we'll have to take that. Also saw something really interesting. So there's sort of this rumor going on that Matthew McConaughey, all right, is going to be running for governor, I believe. And apparently he's polling better than Beto O'Rourke. In fact, they're saying in a head-to-head, Beto O'Rourke would actually lose to Abbott, whereas McConaughey would absolutely take the office. So I'm just going to ask, out of absolute curiosity at this point, is Matthew McConaughey seriously considering taking a political run for governor of the state of Texas? That's yes. So let's just see how that all unfolds, shall we? Okay, so I want to take a look today based on, one other housekeeping note before I forget, because if I don't say it now, I'll forget it. As you are aware, I have been sort of sideswiped by a couple of really significant people in my life who have passed in the last little while. While I was away in Toronto at a funeral, of that funeral of my cousin, a really close friend of mine, I was talking to her, and while we were gone, she had to attend 2 funerals. And so it got me thinking about the fact that maybe it was time on the Soulprint Insights channel. The link is in the description box below if you're not familiar with this channel. It is another channel of mine, and this one I'm going to be doing a series, I think, starting this week and for the next couple of weeks after that. I think it's going to end up being a 3-part series called In Death. And so what I'm going to look at is why the number of people are dying the way they're dying right now. And the earthbound answer is because of the pandemic, but it's beyond that. I want to look at a higher vibrational energy, look at why that's going on. I think I'm going to take a look at sorry, my mind just went blank and I had them listed. I want to take a look at why people choose fast exits and slow exits. I want to have a conversation about why some people are sort of turned around, why they have near-death experiences, but they actually are sent kind of back to Earth to complete their lifetimes or etc. I want to talk about exit points because they really are such a thing. There's several points during the course of a lifetime where somebody can or somebody has set up times where they could exit if what they came here to accomplish was completed. And that doesn't mean they have to, it just means they've set them up. And I also want to take a look at sort of soul groups and how they incarnate together and what happens in death, how that works. So that's going to be an in-depth series. It's probably going to be titled like In Death Part 1, 2, 3 kind of thing. Look for that. If not later this week on the Insights channel, it will be next week. But I'm going to be taking a look at that. I just think that a lot of us have been really hit with a lot of people passing, knowing people who are dealing with grief. And I just thought it would be a really good time to just revisit the issue of going into the light and what that looks like and how that feels, how it happens, etc. So just so you know, today I want to look at, wow, sorry, that was a really long chitter chatter I had there. Okay, so today I want to take a look at the MAGA people. I want to look at the crowd, those Trumpers, those supporters of his. So you have the deal in California. Gavin Newsom did not get recalled, and he did not get recalled by a rather resounding majority of people. So the Republican sort of stance on the whole COVID thing, and let's bring him down because he's not doing the right thing with COVID, etc. That blew up in their faces. Okay, that didn't work. And then you had this rally this past weekend of the people who were, I don't know, what the heck were they actually rallying about? Something about the unfair treatment of the political prisoners from the January 6th insurrection that I think most of them consider a peaceful protest. And, those people weren't violent. They were just trying to get into a public building. So I want to take a look and just see how they're doing. And by the way, I have to say that rally on Saturday was even less of a nothing burger than I thought it would be. So that in and of itself is interesting. Apparently, a lot of kind of the right-wing groups were telling their people to not go. So maybe that cut down on some of the anticipated or expected violence, etc. But there really was very little that went on there. But I have to think that some of this is it has to be having some sort of an impact on Republicans who voted for Trump, although according to stats, there are still some 70% of the people, 70% of Republicans, who believe that the election was stolen from Trump and Biden is an illegitimate president. All righty. So let's take a look at the MAGA crowd. How are they doing? How are Republicans overall doing? How are elected Republicans? What's going on with them? So let's see what we can find out, shall we? Come on down, I have a question. Okay, so Republicans, MAGA, Trump. Republicans, MAGA, Trump. Republicans, MAGA, Trump. Let's just see what I can see about what is going on there. Okay. So the reality is at this point is they are so entrenched, especially the MAGA people, okay? They are so entrenched in the big lie. They are so entrenched in the, not following science. They are so focused on basically what they're being told is accurate, and they, for whatever reason, have not in any way tried to verify that what they're hearing and what they're believing is accurate. So they are still in a state of absolute refusal. Okay, they do not want to look at the facts. They do not want to literally hear anything that contradicts what they choose to believe is true. Part of the reason for that, of course, is that they have become so emotionally invested. First of all, part of the reason this whole thing was able to move forward was because, one, Donald the Con is really good at firing up people's baser emotions. And so he focused on a group of people that were already feeling disenfranchised. They were already feeling like kind of their way of life was in jeopardy. Now, why those people actually thought that a barely successful reality TV / real estate mogul would be able to understand where they were coming from. I still haven't wrapped my head around that, but apparently he was able to do it. He tapped into their fears about, you know, losing whatever it is that they are holding so tightly to. So at this point, they are so emotionally invested in that belief structure that it's going to be very, very hard to get some of these people to let go. They really are trapped. They are blinded, and they're not at all interested or prepared, frankly, to look at anything that does not conform to their belief structure. It's just as simple as that. And unfortunately, the reality is that Republican politicians, by and large, are seeing that they need to, it really feels like strike while the iron's hot, right? They are going full steam ahead. They're supporting that man. They are, trying to become little clones of him, even though it's starting to look like being a clone of him actually doesn't help win you elections, be that as it may. Because frankly, they see it as advantageous to their political life. They see it as a way of raking in money, donations, status, security. And they understand that the base is so caught up in the big lie. They're so caught up in the con that all they can really do, because if they start fighting it, if they start doing it's not true, that doesn't go well for them with the 70% of Republicans who believe what they believe. And so right now, the vast majority of them are going along with the con because it is advantageous to them. It has nothing to do with their constituents. It has nothing to do with why they were voted. And then you have that subgroup, okay, who are all about the kinds of issues that they have long worked to implement, reverse, etc. So I'm talking about, Roe versus Wade. I'm talking about immigration. I'm talking about continued gerrymandering. I'm talking about, really, really tightening up voter rights so that those people who are not likely to vote for them won't have the opportunity to vote for them. And I mean, that's what's behind the immigration thing, right? It's like, if all of these people, and I can't remember what politician, but one of them just recently said it, if all of those immigrants are allowed to immigrate, they're allowed to gain legal status, that's going to completely screw up the number of Republicans versus liberals in the country, because of course all of those people, or the vast majority of them, are likely to vote liberal, which means the immigration vote could literally annihilate the Republican Party. And so what you have is Republican politicians who were going gangbusters, full steam ahead, because they want the money, they want the status, they want the political leverage that they can only get if they not only condone, unfortunately, but participate in this con and this big lie. And they are using it to do everything in their power to try to solidify their position, to push through the things that they want to push through. One of the things that, frankly, was very unfortunate in the last federal election is that many places, when we were talking about state elections, they voted for more liberal, more democratic, I don't even know what they're called, but members of the state government, representatives, I don't know what they're called, but they voted in Republican governors. So what happened is you ended up almost like getting 6 of one and half a dozen of another, and everything kind of got messy and stuck. What happened was they did not deliver a resounding no to the kind of Republican issues that were going on, which was part of the reason why you have this crazy nonsense going on with all of the audits, etc., because they can get away with it. They can push forward, especially in those red states where, yes, there were probably, I don't know, but I'm guessing more sort of Democrats voted in, but not enough to actually take, put them in a position where they could actually control something or contribute something. So that's the energy you have going on right now. And of course, every time it looks like, there's a slip in interest or maybe things are getting a little less firm, the Fool shows up. And, he starts spreading stories about how he's going to run and he's just thinking about it. And by the way, if you want me to run, you better give me lots of money because, I'm going to have these legal problems coming up or whatever stupid story he is telling people that they are believing. And so what's going on right now in some crazy way is like a well-orchestrated dance between the con man, the politicians, and the urge and it's like a last stab at getting what the Republican people want. And of course, the Republicans are now being controlled by a good sized number of Republicans, but in fact, they're like 30% or 35% of the actual country in terms of voters, because anyone who was Republican but more mainstream has become independent. And so they're allowing this really small minority of the country, like 25 or 30% of the country, is now dictating to these politicians who is going to do everything they can to not get on this guy's bad side, right? So what is happening is you really have this extreme right-wing, philosophy really, really taking hold. And that is, that comes from that, white is right. It comes from that, anti-abortion, but don't frankly give a damn about the kid once it's born. It comes from that we only want our kind of people in the country, and we're going to do whatever it takes to get it. So that's kind of the energy that's going on right now. And as of right now, I'm sorry to say that hold is actually still pretty strong. So I was thinking earlier about the fact that not only myself, but a lot of us seem to have been seeing these really dark clouds that were going to start circling around Trump in September. And I think part of the dark clouds are exactly what you saw in California and what you saw at the rally on Saturday, which is it's softening, and it's not as powerful and vibrant and etc. as it was or they hoped it would be, but it's still there. Okay, so what I'm seeing is more like of a letdown or things not kind of manifesting the way they hoped it would. I'm going to check to see if there's actually still bad news tumbling down the pike for Trump. I believe that there are going to be more issues and they're going to be legal. That, God, I hope I get this right, E. Jean Carroll, the woman who says that she was assaulted by Trump in a dressing room at a department store, that case is going ahead. I think as we go from, honestly, from this point forward, it's going to be bad news after bad news after bad news for Trump. How far that goes this year, I think it feels like it's building momentum. And so again, there's a lot of stuff that's going on behind the scenes that we're not seeing yet, that hasn't sort of come to full fruition. But I think that he's simply going to have a very, very difficult time going forward. And I have always said that part of the reason that he's not going to run is because he's going to be so trapped in this, all of his legal problems, that he's really not going to be able to have the time or the energy, or frankly, the money or the support to, really move forward on that in any significant way. So there's still a lot going on behind the scenes that we don't know about, but what we are seeing is that very loud 30% of people who are just going to push as hard as they can to get what they want done. Like, you have to realize that Republicans can read the writing on the wall. They just don't want to admit they can read the writing. Well, the writing on the wall says your party is done. And so they are going to do every single thing they can to push their agenda as hard as they can to get what they want accomplished. And that is why you see Mitch McConnell holding the Senate minority, but holding it so tight in his grip, because he doesn't want sort of any deflectors, because he wants to ensure that he stops the Biden administration in their tracks. And frankly, this has been, even before the last election, he was aware of the fact that the Republicans were probably not going to successfully win that election. And so he had this strategy and this plan in place for a long time about how he was going to create these blocks. Now, this is the thing, okay? When something is sick, right? When something is so out of balance, when something is creating this much stress and this much turmoil, this much anxiety, at some point, it needs to come to an end. Sometimes it comes crashing down. Sometimes it falls apart brick by brick. But slowly, you're going to see an awareness that things cannot and will not go back to the way they were. What is going to have to happen going forward is the country is going to have to rally around the better angels, frankly, rally around their strength, which is, about inclusiveness, about, all men being created equal. That one. They're going to need to rally around that and honestly forge a new way forward. Because if they don't, you have this, okay? And I don't actually see democracy like completely falling apart in your country and being obliterated. I'm not someone who sees that energy. I still think you guys are going to be able to pull it out of the fire. But make no mistake, politics as it is going on now, with so much partisan, with the Republicans being completely opposed to crossing now. And this is the thing that I don't understand, right? It's like, would their Republican voters not really benefit from that infrastructure plan? So what's actually happening is, in some cases, you have politicians, well, in almost all cases, you have Republican politicians voting against actually what would be better for their constituents, just so that they don't rile the con man. And so it's this kind of political nonsense needs to come down. And the way it's going to come down is by the independents and Democrats pulling together and saying enough is enough is enough. And everything that you try to trash, we're going to come back. One, we're going to block you every way we can, but more, if you end up breaking something, we're going to come back with, sort of guns blazing, excuse the phraseology, and correct it and reverse the worst of the damage that you were trying to do. So that's kind of what we're looking at. You know, it's important that you understand that as of right now, the energy is such that the Democratic Party is going to be able to build the momentum to actually have political victories going forward. And whether that is bills getting passed and signed into law, whether that is, Democrats doing far better in some elections that are anticipated. All I know is there's going to be shifts and changes that happen, and it's ultimately going to benefit the, you know, sort of center left kind of people, even honestly, center right kind of people. And so that coalition is getting bigger and bigger and stronger and stronger. And sometimes that is where, the really left leaning Democrats, they kind of need to pull back a little bit, because if they can even get some of those Republican center over to the independent category, you're going to see the Democratic government, and not just federally, but statewide, really, really starting to pick up momentum and getting stronger and stronger. And that in and of itself is going to go a long way to correct some of the crazy, frankly, that the Republicans have been allowed to do. But it's going to take, like I say, it's going to take the country coming together, and certainly people not giving up. They need to go forward. Ultimately, listen, you have the death card here, you have the tower card here. It looks as if the Republicans are really going to be in for a bit of a fight. But the death card in this case is actually symbolizing sort of that really partisan, angry attitude coming to a close at some point. It may take a few years. God help you, it may even take a decade, but I do see it shifting, because there needs to be a more enlightened, a more inclusive, and a more balanced way for the country to move itself forward. But I want you to remember, when you think about the Republican Party, I really want you to remember that this is about a real pendulum swing hard to the right, and pendulum swings hard to the left. But ultimately, the pendulum works best when it is sort of center, okay, and kind of swinging back and forth like that. And that really is where you want to get back to. You really need the extremes in both cases to settle, so that actually stuff can get done that pulls the country together. Once the country is back together again, that's when you can start negotiating about, how far left do we go, how far right do we go. But until then, until this soul searching is done, until people really come together about what they want the country to look like going forward, you're going to be in this sort of stalemate. And what the cards are telling you, what they are showing you, is that you have the power and the ability to come out of this. And the sacrifices that have been made along the way will not be in vain. But that does mean that kind of everybody needs to, I almost want to say, needs to not be quite so firmly entrenched in their beliefs one way or the other, so that there's at least some degree of compromise. And I got to tell you, that's not going to happen as long as Mitch McConnell's around, but I don't see him being around for that much longer. And I keep saying it, and I keep not knowing why I'm saying it, but I do see that somehow or another he is going to not be around, or for some reason almost like lose power somehow. So I don't know what that's about, but there are shifts and changes that are going to be happening within the Republican Party in several areas, whether that is within the Supreme Court, whether that is federally, whether that is statewide, whatever. But I see some significant losses and shifts and changes coming along for that party, simply because you cannot sustain that much sort of evil, that much bigotry, that much anger and rage. indefinitely. And this is the thing, you know, a lot of us understand that the way that you combat that is not with equal anger. It is with love. It is with positive energy. It is with focusing on what you want and not what you don't want. All right? And you need to remember that. It is so important. Every time somebody said 5 years ago or whatever it was, I don't want Trump to be president, they were enforcing and they were energizing Trump being president, because negative words don't have a lot of power. So I don't want, I will not, I cannot. They get canceled and they made positive. So you only focus on what you do want and you don't energize what you don't want. And frankly, that not only works in politics, it works in life. So it's always a good thing to remember, really in a very broad way. Okay, thank you so very, very much for being here today. The support, the new subscribers, thank you so much. Welcome to Soulprint. It's all amazing, and I'm so grateful, and I appreciate it so very, very much. And just a quick reminder, one, I'm booking private readings in October, and two, keep your eyes open for the in-depth series that will be showing up on the Soulprint Insights channel. Until next time, take care. Be well. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.